Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. My name's Tim, and this is
Joy.
And I'm pleased to say here at the top of the episode, I don't know about you, dear listener, but we survived the big Facebook outage of 2024.
It was so quick that I don't even think Charlie knew it happened because he was out working. But yes, we did.
Yeah, I was at work and it didn't affect me whatsoever.
Did I get hacked for a minute? And then I Googled it. And I was like, nope. And then I set my phone down and I didn't think anything of it.
Yeah, that was the end of that. So something in their data center obviously failed.
Yeah, because it was like, it locked me out. And I was like, that's weird. And I was like, did I get hacked? That was what my first thought was. Because, it's Facebook. It's pretty, like, the scammies are everywhere. I've never been hacked before, knock on wood, but it could happen in theory.
Sure. I mean,
you got to keep a prevalent eye.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you get what you pay for with Facebook. It's free. You are the product, which is why it's free. And I mean, then you get people that complain, oh, Facebook have changed this and they've changed that and it's terrible. And I like to say to people, oh, well, how much do you pay a month for that? What's the subscription? What do you pay?
Who's behind that? Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is I feel like so many of us, like I know Tim's bigger on Threads. I tend to be more on Threads or more on TikTok or something. I'm not on Facebook that much. The only thing that I feel like Facebook is useful for me anymore is just the Messenger.
Yeah,
it's a really good messenger.
Yeah, the Messenger is good. And also we use it with the band. It's very important with the band to communicate gigs and other things that we want to do. And that's where people find out what we're doing.
That makes sense. Like if you have announcements and things going on. But like, it's the only messenger I use. I don't text anyone anymore. Literally. Every person I contact on my phone, Tim, is Facebook Messenger.
Yeah. I think in everywhere else in the world uses WhatsApp, which is still a Facebook thing.
Yep. And I know that like you can even like WhatsApp, there's like you can apply for jobs and stuff now through WhatsApp. Like it's gotten pretty advanced. It's interesting.
Yeah, the United States on the whole just uses text messaging and Facebook Messenger, and the rest of the world seems to use WhatsApp. And I think some parts of the world use Telegram and things like that. But
I remember whenever we were in Greece, we were using this. It's kind of like their version of Uber. It was called like. But it was like Bumble, something close to Bumble.
Bumble is something very different, Joy.
Yes, it is. But it's actually what it was close to. It was about being a bumblebee, and they were all yellow. Well, taxi cabs are generally yellow. But anyway, that's where I was going with that statement. And that's what the guy, because we had to leave at like 2 a.m. to get on our plane,
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of hard to call a taxi at 2 a.m. and the shuttle wasn't running from the thing. So one of the drivers offered to take us, and that's how I had to contact him to let him know we were ready with WhatsApp.
Interesting.
Because he was like, because he didn't want me to have to try to pre-plan it and him be there right on time. He said, just write me when you're up. I said, we have to be at this time. And he's like, that's fine. And so he was like, here's my WhatsApp. And that's how I contacted him.
Interesting. I've never, ever used WhatsApp.
To be fair, I will say I haven't used it since then, Tim. But, to be fair, everybody going to the airport or coming from the airport, they had like a maximum fee that they could charge you so you don't get scammed. So like I knew, I was going to have to pay at least this much. It's like the same fee regardless, because I guess it's a common scam if you're going back and forth to up the prices for the taxi.
Absolutely.
Wow, this podcast is really about the music. Let's go on.
Okay, well, let's steer it back to the music. So, Joy, at the very beginning of the episode here, I think you've got some music news items for us.
I do. So my music news is something Tim may already know. It is about Dave Grohl, the Foo Fighters. They just did a concert for Love Rocks NYC benefit, and they did a really good cover of Paul McCartney's Bond theme, Live and Let Die. Have you seen it yet, Tim?
No, I haven't, and I would love to hear that. Now, Dave Grohl has done Band on the Run before. And as we spoke, he did that at the White House with Paul McCartney's band, with Paul McCartney watching him do it, which was really weird. But I'd be interested to hear him do Live and Let Die.
So he strayed a little bit on some of the high notes because it is ballady, but but It's so good. The backing vocals sound great. There's like a lot of like almost hard rock portions to it that Dave Grohl did to it. I'll send you it as soon as we leave, Teddy. You can read it or Google it. You know how to use the Goog machine. But
Yeah.
it was a two-song benefit that they did. The other song was Everlong. So they did Live and Let Die and Everlong, and all the money goes to Love Rocks, which I don't know a whole lot about it, but I think it's a nonprofit that's raising money for food or something like that. I know Conan O'Brien was there. They said Nile Rodgers was there. The Black Keys were there. So it's probably worth giving it a goog just to listen to the concert.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, Dave Grohl gives a lot back. One of the things that he does is he works with a lot of food banks, and he also works with like feeding homeless people. And one thing he loves to do is barbecue. And apparently, he buys like really high end food and then barbecues it for like 23 hours straight, and then gives it to people who need food, who are needy.
Yep. And if you Google him, there are plenty of articles about all the nice stuff that he has done. He seems to be a very nice person.
Yeah. Are your opinions of Mr. Grohl changing?
I don't like him as a person, but I don't know why. But I know he's done good things. So for those who don't know, Dave Grohl is one of those people that I continually say, I don't know what it is about his face, but I don't like it. But I do know he's a good musician. I know he's a good person, but there's just something about him. And maybe it's kind of like where you hit the nail on the head. Did you write it? You're reading or did read his like biography, right?
Yeah, I listened to the audiobook.
That's what it was. And he said that some of the moments when he's talking about, oh, me hanging out with this person, and it's a little bit of pretension, and that's what bothers me. I don't know. Or maybe I'm just jealous. That could be it too.
I mean, he comes across as a super nice guy, and he comes across as somebody who sort of really understands how he got there. But at the same time, when you have 4 stories in your autobiography that revolve around how you hang out with Paul McCartney, it's just a little bit,
That might be what it is. It's a little, I don't want to say he's a bad guy because I know he's done a lot of good things, but for some reason he does tend to bother me.
Well, then,
All right.
well, there we are. Well, by the same token, like Adam Lambert, nothing against the guy. He's a great singer, great performer. There's something about him I don't like it when he performs with my favorite band. So, I get that.
Daryl Hall is actually a supervillain, so.
Well, funny you should say that. Funny you should say that. Let me slip into my music news item and I'll go back to you. So I have some Daryl Hall news. So Daryl Hall and Elvis Costello have announced a spring and summer 2024 tour. Now, John Oates himself has gone off and is playing solo shows as John Oates. And in fact, he'll be playing at the Harvester soon, which is in Rocky Mount, which is not far from us.
I've been seeing that. I like to. The REO Speedwagon's coming close to us, too.
Yeah, they're going to come to the Salem Civic Center, a venue I played at a few weeks ago. Anyhow.
Okay.
Yeah, Daryl Hall and Elvis Costello have announced this tour. And we all know about evil supervillain Daryl Hall, but Elvis Costello, I mean, I don't know the guy personally at all. And he has done some really good music. But every time I see him interviewed, he just seems completely full of himself.
He does have a little bit of that air. And it's kind of interesting that of all the people for him to sign up for a tour with would be Daryl Hall.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, his name's not even Elvis Costello. It's Declan McManus. And I know it's rock and roll when you change your name. Yeah. But Elvis, fancy calling yourself Elvis. The other thing, the guy's from Hounslow. He went to St. Mark's Catholic School in Hounslow.
You and Elvis may have crossed paths and you didn't even know it.
Well, he's probably 15 years older than me or something like that. But I mean, sure. I doubt if I ever cross paths with Declan McManus, but I don't know. As I said, I don't know him, but he always just comes across as completely full of himself. So I just think it's entertaining that he's decided to do a co-headlining tour with Daryl Hall.
Of all the people.
Exactly.
All right. Well, that is everything I had for music news. Did you have one other thing, Tim?
Yeah, I've got one other thing. So talking about the Spotify. Now, as I said, I heard Dave Grohl's autobiography on the Spotify using the audiobook function, and you now get 15 hours a month of audiobooks, depending on where in the world that you have your Spotify.
I've been putting that to work, too.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is they've come out with a new subscription tier, which seems weird. So mostly wherever you are in the world, Spotify is around 10 or 11 US dollars. We pay 10.99.
Yeah.
And I think in the England it's £10.99. And whatever your local currency is, it's about the same kind of money.
Okay.
So they have come out with a subscription tier just for audiobooks. But the curious thing is, it's only $1 cheaper than the regular plan. And the only thing that you're losing for that dollar is all of the music.
But are you still only getting 15 hours of the
Yeah.
audiobooks, or do you get unlimited?
Yeah, you're only getting 15 hours of audiobooks. You're not getting your music, and it's just $1 cheaper. It seems pointless.
That's baffling because I could see it if you get unlimited audiobooks, if that's like what you want to listen to. I'm not going to yuck your yum. If that's what you enjoy, that's what you enjoy. People, Audible exists for a reason. People love it. But yeah, that's strange. Maybe it's just a weird marketing thing. They're just trying to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I mean, if it was half the price, maybe, or
Yeah.
like you say, or like it was 30 hours, or it was unlimited, that makes sense. But this just seems wacky. Why would you just save £1, dollar, whatever?
Well, and Audible's pretty cheap, and don't you get like a discount through Amazon already? And almost everybody has like Amazon Prime.
Well, Audible is weird. I tried to use Audible, and you have to pay a monthly subscription, and then only certain books are available to you, and then anything you ever want to listen to, there's like credits, and you can only have one of those a month, and it's really it's incredibly convoluted.
Okay, well then maybe that comes into it. But also, like, I know I get quite a few free books with Prime. So, I mean, that exists too. Just saying, I wouldn't spend that for just audiobooks.
The Prime thing, is that just audiobooks?
I think you could. I think it's got like if you go through your Prime, you can read. There's regular books and audiobooks. But I've never played around with. I've read real books like on paper, and I've listened to books through Prime. But there's only certain ones. Like it'll be like available with Prime or whatever.
No, I don't know. I mean, the only reason we have Prime is for the free shipping. I mean,
Exactly.
It's now free 2-week shipping or something.
Don't get me started. We just ordered all that stuff for the printing business that I'm in now, by the way, guys. FYI, I'm now a business owner too. And it took forever for some of that stuff. We're still getting things in, Tim, and we ordered it quite a bit ago.
Yeah, Amazon has just sort of lost the plot, especially around here.
I guess we'd have to talk to the CEO. He obviously listens to the podcast.
When he's going up in his spaceship, I understand he often puts on the No Name Music Cast just to relax as he's crossing the Carmen line.
Of course, that all makes sense. That checks out. All right. Well, I think that's everything.
Certainly at the beginning of the show. Now, this week's topic is Joy's topic. And I have a pretty good idea of what this is going to be because I was given some research to do to listen to an album, and I've listened to it every day since Monday. I feel I know this album pretty well now. And it was like, I have my lunch, come back from lunch, put this album on for an hour. I can tell you it runs for 1 hour exactly.
It does, because I did it earlier today.
And that has been my listening. So, Joy, tell the dear listeners what the topic is this week.
So I had Tim listen to Glee, the music, volume 1. So yes, this is a Glee episode. So for any of my Glee fans, you guys will love this. Now, with this being said, I will say, listening to the music in isolation and not knowing what was happening in the show related to this song is kind of strange because I remember most of them. Like I can tell you different, we'll get into it, but like different songs, I could say what was happening in that scene to why it led up to that. But just hearing them in isolation, I was cracking up thinking about what Tim has to be because it's a wide array of songs. Now, this album is 16 songs, 17, Joy. I can't read or scroll, apparently. 17 songs long. So it is a long one. We might not hit everything, but just for some background, if you guys don't know what Glee is and you listen to the podcast, that is shocking. But it was a TV show that was based on a musical comedy kind of drama. So it basically took what you had with long scale musicals and put it in sitcom form. It ran from May 9th, 2009 to March 20th, 2015. It centers around the New Directions, which was a Glee club. at a fictional school called William McKinley in Ohio. And a lot of the show, yes, there was a lot of, they went and competed with show choirs, but it dealt a lot with social issues regarding like LGBTQ, race, team relationships, teamwork, and just general things. And it was very pro, keeping music in the arts in schools. And yeah, that's pretty much the basics of it. It's silly. It's funny. Parts of it are funny. They play on themselves. It's not supposed to be taken seriously through most of it. But for what it was worth, everybody who was in the show really could sing quite well. They did a great job putting the cast together. What is funny, though, and what I think Tim will agree with, is hearing some of the Broadway spins on some of your classic songs you didn't know. The other thing they did that I really loved with Glee is they would take songs that were popular in the moment. Like, let's say, one episode, this isn't in this thing, it was like I Kissed a Girl was everywhere on the radio by Katy Perry. So guess what was in Glee that week? Yeah. I Kissed a Girl. So they played on pop culture too. So before we get into the song list, Tim, I just want to know what your initial thoughts were when you first turned this on.
Well, when I first heard it, I tell you what it reminded me of. It reminded me of the We Will Rock You sort of West End production, if you like. So yeah. They're like their Broadway, West End, whatever, wherever you are, versions of classic songs. Because especially in this list, there's a few classic rock songs in there, but they're very much the Broadway version.
And sometimes that works, and sometimes it's cheeky, and you kind of like, your eye kind of twitches, but you're kind of like, I get it. It does help when you're watching it in the show and you've tied the characters than just listening to it in isolation, too, I think, because a lot of it will be like built into the story plot. So the first song that we're going to talk about, we'll just get into it, was the song that literally recharted at #1 for like 6 months, I think, or some crazy number. It brought back the original, it recharted, and it is the song that if anyone knows anything about Glee was their most popular song, and that is Don't Stop Believing by Journey, or the Glee cover.
Yeah, 111 million listens on Spotify, I can tell you that. And yeah, this is what opens the album. And because this was the first time I'd ever heard anything Glee. I mean, Joy has mentioned Glee on every podcast episode, basically. And this is the first time I'd ever heard anything to do with that. And when the minute this started, I thought to myself, yeah, this is like the We Will Rock You album, but it's different band covers.
It really is. I will say I absolutely am burnt out of this song. And part of it was because of the resurgence behind Glee. But it was one of the very opening, if it wasn't the opening episode, very opening, like the biggest song that they learned and they all came together for it. It was like a really pivotal moment in the show. And that was kind of the point. Now, I will say the arrangement on this is quite good. I do think that it sounds Broadway, which is kind of hard for me to hear Don't Stop Believing as Broadway. It's not what my natural is. But I will say I could go 1,000 years, Tim, and never hear Don't Stop Believing again, and I think I'd be fine.
Yeah, I've listened to it 5 times this week, this version. And yes, I'd be happy to retire this from my listening for a little while.
Tim's eyes just going to start slowly when he hears a cigarette, a smoke, his eye just starts twitching. And there is never a song that I literally know every word front to back. Like, I don't have to, you know what I mean, Tim? Like, I just quote right off the top of my head. It's up there with Bohemian Rhapsody. All right. So the next one is also one that was kind of so in the opening season, Tim, just for perspective, Finn was the main character. He was the football character, and he was Corey Monteith that passed away in real life. He was really, his dad and his mom were super into like old school 70s and 80s. So when they recruited him for the podcast, yeah, we recruited him for No Name Music Cast, everybody. When they recruited him for the Glee Club, they found him in the bathroom singing, I don't know, probably Boston or Journey or something. So that's why that's kind of like a running theme in the earlier episodes. But the song is Can't Fight This Feeling by REO Speedwagon.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good song anyway, and this is actually a pretty good version. I was surprised how good this version is.
He's quite good at it, but do you think it was modulated, or does he sound a little flat to you, or am I going crazy? Something about it had a different sound.
Some of these tracks have a little bit of auto tune on them. If you listen to it,
it might have been what I was hearing.
If you listen to it, I mean, it depends on how much attention was put into the production of this. It's easier. It's just to auto-tune stuff.
Well, and this was one of the earlier albums too. I think they all got better at singing, honestly, because they were taking lessons and doing it day in and day out. Now, Corey Monteith, in his real life, he was a drummer. He wasn't a singer, but he plays drums at a few of the like background pieces. But he's from Canada, and when he auditioned, they just loved him instantly. But he wasn't like a singer by craft. He was supposed to be a drummer. But he sounds good. I think this is probably one of the better songs for him singing wise. Though I did feel like either it was something about it is a little off, and maybe you're right. Maybe it was the auto tune I was hearing.
Yeah, a lowly 14 million streams on Spotify. So yeah, people were listening to the auto-tune and just switching it right off, probably.
Anyway, so the next song helps if I actually have Spotify up. It's one that makes me feel uncomfortable every time I hear it now. I don't know why, but it's very strange. It is Kanye West's Gold Digger.
Yeah, this is the only song I've ever heard of Kanye West. I was aware of this song because when I used to DJ the breaks with my previous band, this was in one of the songs I used to play. This was an interesting choice for the Glee soundtrack. The unedited version of this song is very offensive and has words in it that should never be spoken. And admittedly, this is the edited radio-friendly version that they played on the radio, the same version. But I don't know, it sort of felt a little bit out of place.
Well, it is weirder. So, and if you guys don't know this, I'm sure Tim knows this. Gold Digger samples the Ray Charles song, I Got a Woman, way over time, who digs up that song. Yeah. So, like, it's like so if you've never heard that, that was actually really cool. And that's where the cool hook in this song comes from. It's not like it's from the Kanye West side of it, just clarifying. But what's really weirder about Mercedes is the girl who's got the really great voice that's rich and soulful. You hear her sing throughout. That was her. Her real name's Amber Riley. Sorry if you're listening. I probably will switch between their character names and their real names a lot. So it's the same for me. But anyway, she sounds so good at the very beginning of this. But what's awkward is the fact that it's the teacher of the Glee Club singing this with the Glee Club, Tim. Keep that in perspective.
It just seems weird. As I said, it's completely out of context with the rest of the songs that are on here. Well,
in the show, his wife was being a gold digger, basically, and they ended up getting divorced, and she faked a pregnancy. Sorry, spoiler alert, everybody. But so it was in context with the. That's why I said when you just hear them in isolation, it's random. But this one just. And Matthew Morrison, just a little too campy. There's no soul there. Like, I don't know how to explain it. He's very Broadway.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm not a fan of this song anyway. And having listened to it 5 times this week, I would probably be happy to never, ever hear it ever again.
Now, what I will say is Matthew Morrison is the one from the boy band that you showed me on that.
Fresh Step. He was in Fresh Step. The big,
that's him.
The big, perfectly made up boy band.
Yep, that's who was singing this, Tim, if you didn't realize it yet. And to be fair, I had a dead giveaway when I saw Fresh Step because that they obviously weren't real as soon as I saw his face. All right, so the next song is... Take a Bow, which is a Rihanna song, which I wonder if Tim has ever heard before this moment.
No, this is a song I've never heard of before. I can tell you one thing. So I know this is the first time I've ever heard a Rihanna song.
Okay.
And there was a period of time when Nuno Bettencourt, the guitarist from Extreme, either left Extreme or Extreme were not active or they'd split up or something. And that was reasonably recently. Before they had their big comeback album that they came out with 6. And he was Rihanna's musical director and guitarist in her band. And they did a huge world tour. And he was the musical director for the band. And I remember saying to Hannah about Nuno Bettencourt, how the mighty have fallen. And then she said, do you realize how popular she is? I said, I have no idea.
She was probably like, and Tim lives under a rock.
I'm the same person when I said to somebody that, because Adele was playing Wembley Stadium, and I said, is she famous enough to play Wembley Stadium?
Damn. That might be because you're not the biggest fan, but anyway, I will say I don't care for Rihanna very much either. I don't like. It's not like I dislike her or I like her, Tim. She's just not a musician I look up, but I do know she's very popular. I will say this song I felt was a little weird because Leah Michelle sounds so Broadway and it's kind of a soulful song, but I like the arrangement on it. Like, I think that that's one thing that they succeed very well with is adding the different arrangement pieces to the song to make them more musical.
Yeah, I mean, like it does have that classic musical theater sound about it, and I think it's a way that the Broadway singers sing, because like a rock singer tends to have a bit more of a grit to their voice, but like Broadway singers sing very pure, and one of the reasons they sing so pure is that they normally would have to perform 5 or 6 nights a week, and if you're singing like a rock singer, it's going to burn your voice out. But they're trained to sing in a certain way that gives that very pure sound, which doesn't strain their voices as much.
Yeah, they're trained to pull from their chest voice, and when they have to flip to their head, so they're not rubbing their vocal cords together. But also, they're trying to project because they don't. It's not like someone's recording them and gonna, go through and re-edit the software afterwards. Though they have like a kind of overly pronounced projection when they speak, and it comes out when they sing too. And so that's the Broadway-esque. But yeah, they definitely you couldn't sing like the way Billy Idol sang every night on Broadway. If you would make it like 2 weeks and your throat would feel like it was on fire.
Yeah, you look at any rock tour, they don't perform every night. It's normally every other night, or they might do 3 nights and then have 4 off or something like that.
Exactly. Now, this next song, once again, without context, was probably very strange for Tim. And I know he's never heard it before. And to be fair, I'm not sure I had heard this song before this either, but it's called Bust Your Windows.
Yeah, it's some kind of song that's condoning property damage.
It is. And that's what's happening in the episode. So Mercedes she thought she was being cheated on. It's a whole thing. And so what does she do? She breaks the car windows of his dad's vehicle and then proceeds to sing this song.
Yeah, and then the police come, and then she gets done for grand larceny or whatever it is.
She's under 18, Tim. He gave her a slap on the wrist and sent her home. But yeah, that's why it is. But I mean, take the song for what it is, because like I said, I don't even know who the original singer is. Mercedes has a great voice. She could literally sing the phone book and sounds amazing.
Yeah, I think the performance is good. It was Jasmine Sullivan was the original singer, someone I've never heard of. But yeah, same. I think the person singing it has a great voice and they deliver this song well. But as I said, the first I heard of this was Monday afternoon.
Yeah, I'm sure the first I heard of this was in 2009 when this episode came out. All right. So the next one, I have some comments about the lyrics. This is a Celine Dion song. It's called Taking Chances. And of course, that's obviously really big shoes to fill, right? But I find it very weird that the lyrics of the song say, on this planet they call Earth. Why do they need to say on this planet they call Earth? They could have just said on this planet. I didn't think they were on Mars. Why is that the song lyric?
I don't know. Is Brian May anything to do with this?
I don't know who wrote Celine. Well, I do know that, oh no, that was Barbra Streisand. I was going to say the Bee Gees wrote a bunch of Celine's music, but that was Barbra Streisand. I don't know. But it just threw me off because every time I listened to it this week, all I could hear was on this planet, they call Earth. And I'm like, that's like calling a spade a spade. It's like when you see one of those stupid signs that is like, this is our porch. Oh, I wouldn't have known if you hadn't told me. And that's all I could think of. No, I will say, Leah Michelle sounded wonderful. This, as far as like her Broadway voice goes, I thought that this was probably one of the best songs for her singing on this episode. Or this album. She sounds great, but I couldn't get past that lyric.
Yeah, I think on the whole, the performances across this whole album are superb. As I said, there are a few that have a little dabble of auto-tune here and there. But not one of these performances did I think, oh, that's no good. But all of them, they were very competent. Some of them were excellent.
Yeah, I will say Corey Monteith, like I said, he was a drummer, and Naya Riviera wasn't as strong with her singing when they first came on, but they actually did a lot of background vocals to, like, you know what I mean? They had people there training them. So you can hear, if you listen from season one to the end, that their singing voice just gets better. And I think over time you'll see less of the auto tune too, because they just got, I mean, well, if you're doing this day in and day out and you're doing singing, dancing, and, you know, full songs like this, and they have to learn them so fast because, like I said, let's say Katy Perry's new song came out a week, 2 weeks later, it would be on that Glee episode, and it was like a song that just came out 2 weeks. But they would just pick it up and go and just slide it right in. And I don't know how they always made it work, but they did a great job.
So,
Ryan Murphy,
yeah. So was this a weekly show?
came on every Wednesday.
Okay. And how many episodes are there? I'm just curious. Is it hundreds and hundreds of episodes?
Oh, let's see. It ended up being shorter than it was supposed to because of when Corey Monteith died. But let me see how many episodes there were. It should be on this thing that rhymes with encyclopedia I have open. I'm just gonna Google it. How many
Episodes of Glee?
121.
Okay, so yeah, that's a lot of episodes.
I did read the fact, and I was going to bring it up. The cast performed over 729 songs.
Wow.
And so they would, and I was wrong. They did do a Alanis Morissette song. I found it the other day. I couldn't remember, but there was one at least. So yeah, that's a lot of songs, and they would just like, I mean, I can't even imagine. They had to be like living, eating, and breathing together, like the Spice Girls or something, to come up with put that stuff together that quickly.
Yeah, and I'm sure there was probably a musical director over it, or a team that was over it to get all the arrangements together and all that sort of stuff.
So, fun fact: there was a branch off show of Glee that was like a reality TV show. That they picked a couple of members from, like, they had people compete, like almost like American Idol, and then a few of them got to be in the show Glee, and you get to meet. So it's like Ryan Murphy wrote it, and then Brian something Check, I don't know what his name is. He does a lot of the music, but they had music. They had like two major music directors. They had choreographer. Like, it was a whole spectacle that was constantly going on. If you go back and watch those episodes, you could see them doing the training for it. So yes. All right, now. The next one is somebody who is he's not a household name for everybody, but definitely a household name for me. And she was a guest show member show, one of those words. It's Kristen Chenoweth. And if you know anything about Broadway, you know who Kristen Chenoweth is. She is a classically trained opera singer. She was in Wicked. Popular. That song was her. So she sang two songs, I think, on this album, and I absolutely loved her. I say she was probably on like 5 to 8 episodes. And this was Alone by Heart. And I want to know what Tim thought about this cover.
Yeah, I actually thought it was really good. I mean, the Wilson sisters is a very hard act to follow, incredibly hard act to follow. And this is peak 80s, big hairspray, big production, big everything, hot. You know, it's not the same classic rock band that they were back in the 70s. But this version is actually very strong, and it almost lends itself to that sort of Broadway-esque type singing. Well,
and I feel like Kristen Chenoweth can do no wrong. But this, like I've said many times, Heart is a band that I refuse to cover. And it's hard for me to find good Heart covers. It always mixes the mark because people don't realize how high the notes are at the end of this. Like, and it's not like you have a high note and then it just stops. Like, your voice stays in that high register for a very long time. And to stay on pitch like that is hard, Tim. And I mean, yes, obviously we know that the members of Heart could do it, but Kristen Chenoweth does it really good. And Matthew Morris, I think at the end, is singing the little kind of like male harmony parts. And his voice is quite high for a man. And when I was reading this, I found out his part was actually written for Justin Timberlake. That was who they wanted to do Matthew Morrison's part in Glee. And it makes sense now because Matthew Morrison kind of sounds like Justin Timberlake when they sing.
Interesting.
And they both have very similar hair. I read that fact. But yeah, I will say, I think this was probably my favorite song of the whole album, if I'm being honest. I think she does a fantastic job.
Yeah, I was very pleased with this, listening to it. As I was not disappointed. None of these tracks were really that bad, apart from the Kanye West one, which I don't really care for. But all of them were done. But yeah, this was a very good cover.
Yes. If you take anything from this, give that one a listen because it's great. Now, speaking of Kristen Chenoweth, she's in the next song, but it's actually a duet. And the rest of the Glee cast is in this with her. And if you're not familiar with this is Maybe This Time, which is Liza Minnelli. Or no, yes.
Yeah, it's Liza Minnelli.
Why, when I said that, that felt like that rolled off the tongue wrong? Everybody ignore what I said. Liza, she definitely did this from Cabaret. So that's an incredibly hard song to sing. And I'm glad that Kristen Chenoweth was the one to do it on Glee, because I don't know how many other people, like, they're great singers, but Liza Minnelli is a very specific sound.
Yeah, I actually watched a Liza Minnelli concert recently on Peacock. And it was after Cabaret, because she was singing some Cabaret songs and she was singing some other songs, and it was like a one-person show in a theater type thing, and there was dancing and she was singing and she was telling stories and all this kind of stuff. And you know, I don't know if people are still talking about Liza Minnelli so much. I mean, she's very much older now and she doesn't perform now. But you know, there was a period of time when she was so popular, and she was Broadway.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I don't think people are. I mean, some people are probably still super into her, but I don't know if people are referencing her as much as they used to.
well, I think the thing with Liza Minnelli is she has a very strong voice. Now, somebody out there is going to scream when I say this. Just listen to the whole statement. But she has a very specific voice, almost like Bob Dylan, in the sense that it's rough, but she can actually sing. Like, does that make sense? And so I feel like sometimes she's a little bit rough on the ear when you hear her, but she has this like way to like command a stage and get you to pay attention to her that works in Broadway world.
Yeah, she's almost speak singing it in a way. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, for example, at the Freddie Mercury tribute concert, she did We Are the Champions. And it's like, I've paid my dues time after time.
It is.
It's that kind of thing.
And when she starts hitting those high notes, it's like she's got a very interesting sound. So I feel like she can be intense if you don't know what Liza Minnelli sounds like.
Absolutely.
And so, but Kristen Chenoweth is like, she's an actual opera singer. I don't know if you know that about her, Tim, but she's a trained opera singer. That's where her history is at. Yeah, you can Google Kristen Chenoweth and she'll come up singing opera. So she has a really nice, and one of the things about opera is it helps develop that ability to have like almost like a very interesting highs and lows and back and forth and things like that. So I think it fits really well. Now, I think Leah Michele is singing with Kristen Chenoweth. They're going back and forth. That's why you get that kind of rough sound, and then you get the Michelle. I think it's necessary. I don't think Leah Michele could have done this herself.
Mm-hmm.
I think you had to have Kristen. Or maybe I just really like Kristen Chenoweth and think she should sing everything.
Well, I mean, there is that. I mean, you just happen to like us, and that's absolutely fine.
Well, you're familiar with Wicked, right, Tim? Have you ever watched Wicked? Yeah.
I saw Wicked on Broadway, in fact.
There you go, guys. If you haven't seen the original cast of Wicked, you need to go see it. It's so good.
Yeah, well, and I have the soundtrack album on CD of it, in fact.
Look at you, Tim, above and beyond. I remember it was 2007 when Wicked came out.
Mm-hmm.
About then. And everybody in my Glee Club was obsessed with it. Like, it was instantly obsessed with anybody who was anything related to music. Mm-hmm. Like, just instant success. Probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest show, I think, of my generation.
I think so. I mean, prior to that, it was Rent. Rent was the huge show.
Which is my other favorite, of course. Yeah. I was literally listening to Out Tonight right before we came on the podcast. So
there we are. I was listening to David Gilmour, actually.
We were doing very different things. All right. So we're going to get into this. And this is something I want to hear Tim's opinion on before I say anything. The next song is Somebody to Love by a band called Queen.
Yeah. So this version is not super dissimilar from the version on the We Will Rock You soundtrack, a soundtrack which of the musical, the London West End musical. It is not super different from that. It's almost the same in the way that the vocal arrangements are done. The musicianship on this version is really good, and I don't know who's playing guitar on this. I'm assuming it's a no-name session guy or session person who really knows what they're doing. Because when they get to the guitar solo, they're playing the right notes, but they have the right sound. They have the two pickup, because I got a Brian May guitar. It's wired weird. It's not wired like a Fender. It's not wired like a Gibson. There's these switches that you turn things on and off, and there's a phase reversal switch. And by doing that, it makes the sound scream. So like on the solo for Bohemian Rhapsody, the famous Bohemian Rhapsody sound, neck pickup, bridge pickup with the phase reversed. And it's a very weird kind of like screechy sound that isn't a traditional guitar sound, but putting it through the Brian May's rig, that's what it sounds like. And in the minute I've got one of these Brian May guitars, and the minute you flip the thing and you do the thing and you play with a coin, he's like, yep, you got it. And now whoever played guitar on this knows all that stuff because it has the right guitar sound.
Hold on, let's see. I'm trying to find if I can find out who did it. Musically, he's an ongoing role. Because there was guitarists that would show up but I don't know if that's who's playing on the recording, right, Tim? They might have just been in the show.
Yeah, I would imagine it's some session ace that did it.
I would think so.
I would be surprised if it's anyone sort of directly in the show. It's probably whichever session people were booked for the session that did it.
Now, I know of like 3 or 4 of them that do play, obviously, guitars and things of that nature, but none of them were capable. I have not found the name, guys. If you guys know who it is, let us know, because I'm curious. I thought that too. The sound on it and the arrangement is really nice. Like you were saying, it's very similar to the Broadway version, but this one honestly, it was just pretty cool.
Yeah.
And Mercedes at the end sounded great. Once again, this is a song that I personally think is very misleading when you hear it. Like, I feel like a lot of people think they could sing Somebody to Love until they try to sing Somebody to Love, and then it never sounds right.
No, and the interesting thing about Somebody to Love, Freddie Mercury wrote it for Aretha Franklin. He wrote it thinking that Aretha Franklin would sing it at some point. And sadly, Aretha Franklin never sang it. But that's who he had in mind when he wrote that song.
Makes sense why Mercedes does the ending, too.
Yeah.
She's got a beautiful voice. Now, the next one is a song that I have never heard of till this episode of Glee. And I have a feeling Tim probably has. We're going to get so much hate from people who be like, how have you never heard this song? But this is another one with Mercedes coming in very soulfully, and it's called Hate on Me by Jill Scott.
Yeah, I'd never heard of Jill Scott before. I'd never heard this track before. I mean, it's fine. I don't have any strong opinions either way on it, really.
Me either. I mean, she sounds good, but I don't know what the original really sounds like, so I can't really place it.
No, that's the thing. I mean, most of this album, I've heard the original, so it's easy for me to compare them against it. But it's sprinkled with tracks I've never heard of and artists I've never heard of. Now, as you know, I live under a rock, and I don't know new music anyway. But for someone like yourself, have heard it either, means it must be reasonably obscure, I suppose.
I would think. We're just not in my genre. I'm not sure. Now, this next song was literally everywhere when I was younger, and it has quite a few million views. And I'm sure Tim has heard this because it was in every radio station. And this song is called No Air, which is a cover of Jordan Sparks and Chris Brown.
Nope, I've never heard this song before.
You've never heard this song before? It was
the
everywhere,
first time I
Tim.
heard it was Monday at 1 p.m. or 1:20 p.m.
I mean, it's a song that was literally everywhere when I was probably, I don't know, 18, 19 years old. And I think they sound good, but it's kind of a ridiculous song to me because it's like, how am I supposed to breathe with no air? Who wrote that line? Tell me how I'm supposed to breathe with no air.
He probably has 52 producers on the original track. I don't know.
It kind of goes back to what was that line earlier, on this planet Earth. I'm like, oh, good. I thought you were on Mars. Thanks.
This is a song I've never, ever heard of before. I mean, I haven't listened to Well, even when I lived in England, I didn't never listen to top 40 radio. I just live in my own musical bubble of things I like.
I mean, that's fair. I can't believe you've listened. You can't believe you missed the musical genius of "Tell me how I'm supposed to breathe with no air.
Yeah,
If I should die before I wake, it's like you took my breath away." That's literally like the first line of the song.
When you say "took my breath away," are you referencing the Queen track? I mean, I don't know.
I don't know, but and then there's like one part where he says, "My heart won't move," and I'm like, I don't think your heart should. I mean, it beats, but it's not moving around your chest. If it's moving around your chest,
have you ever seen like how much a human heart actually does move?
yeah, but
It's freaky to think everyone has got that going on right now.
it's true. But I mean, it's like moving, like it's pumping. Because I mean, remember, I used to teach CPR, so I had to know that, like, you really have to use to get to the heart. You really, and to get it repumping, you have to go in there hard. So yeah, but like, I don't know. I mean, but it's not like moving to Arizona. Your heart's like not moving or like going somewhere. It's staying in the same general location. If your heart is moving that much that it's like you're worried about it, then you probably should go get it checked out.
Yeah, like if you wake up in the morning and the heart says, "Well, actually, I'm going to go to Phoenix, so I'll see you in a couple of weeks."
Gonna go check out what the Louisiana Purchase was all about. All right. Anyway, now that I have no air, so this next song is a song Tim is familiar with. And this is "You Keep Me Hanging On" by the Supremes.
Yeah, this one only has a lowly 7 million listens on Spotify. This was a fine cover. It's like the Broadway version of the Supremes. Now, I think there was a musical which had the music of the Supremes at some point.
Dreamgirls.
Yeah.
So, dream girls, boy. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, so I mean, this is sort of a well-trodden path into the realm of Supreme's music done in a Broadway style. But again, I don't know who's singing on this, but they're doing a fine job.
So Quinn is singing on this, and you don't hear her voice too much throughout. Do you ever notice she's kind of like she's got very sultry alto tones, and sopranos, mostly mezzo sopranos or like soprano ones, tend to get like you hear the most out of like every song. So you don't hear her too much. I think she sounds good. I feel like her voice is underrated. And I didn't care for this arrangement. Like whoever did like the leveling, I thought it was off. Like I wish she could have been a little bit louder so you got a little bit more intense Quinn instead of the backup vocals. But I feel like they were trying to, like, because they have the real soulful backup vocals. I feel like they were trying to make up for Quinn's not as soulful, maybe singing but I think she sounded good. I feel like her voice was underrated, is what I'm getting at, because it sounds really nice, but just whoever did the arrangement, I feel like it's off.
Yeah, I mean, the Supremes themselves, I mean, originally the Supremes were an act of equals, and then sort of Diana Ross rose to the top. But I mean, some of these early Supreme songs, I mean, it is an ensemble singing thing, so maybe they're sort of going for that. I don't know.
I don't know, but something about it was just a little bit off. I wish she could have been able to shine a little bit more. I feel like it didn't do her justice.
Okay, well, we'll have a word with the mixing engineer and see if we can get that one fixed for you.
I'm sure they'll talk to me from 20th Century Fox 2009. But anyway, and maybe that's because actually in the show, I feel like Quinn was like her character. They didn't do enough justice to her as a character. So I'm bringing my own personal thoughts into this song. That could be it too. Now, the next song I thought was super interesting. It has a lot of listens to on the old Spotify's, but I find it very interesting. This is the song they chose. It's "Keep Holding On" by Avril Lavigne.
Yeah, it's a funny Avril Lavigne choice. I mean, I don't know whether it's how that fits in the episode, but I mean, I'd have thought "Complicated" would have probably been a good one. I don't know.
Something happening that they were telling each other to just keep holding on. This was like you know what I mean? Like some moment, but I can't remember exactly what it was. But for me, it felt a little campy when Leah Michelle sings because Avril's not that campy sounding. So it was kind of weird, but I did like how they gave it a little bit of a gospel feel with the background. Like it does. And that is a common theme, I think, in musicals and in general, you'll see in Glee. It almost becomes like songs almost become larger than life gospel tunes.
Yeah, because you have an ensemble cast and you really want to use them for those
So you
backing
might as
vocals.
well.
And then if you have a load of people singing and they're singing in pure Broadway voices in an ensemble, it's sort of by definition sounds sort of gospel-y anyway.
It's very, yeah. It's like Sound of Music meets Sister Act. It's the best way I can explain it. All right, this next song makes me feel uncomfortable. And another way, because it's something that I don't think a teacher should be singing with their Glee students, but this is Bust a Move by Young NC.
Yeah, now this is a song I've actually heard of before. And the reason I've heard of it, a friend for a very old friend called Trevor Hearn, who I very much doubt listens to this podcast, but he used to sing that at karaoke at the Red Line in Twickenham. That was his karaoke song, even to the point where a group of people used to call him Buster, not Trevor.
Well, I like Bust a Move, and I know every lyric to it. So me and your friend have something in common. But this was so weird. And the arrangement where the guy, I feel like they needed some diversity in the singing to pull this off, if I'm saying this politically correct. And they didn't have it. At one point, in the background, I don't know how, well, you said you listened to it every day this week. Like with the cast in the back, just like bust, they just yell, just bust a move or whatever. And it's really odd. It's not really matching the tempo of the song or something. I thought the arrangement was really bad. And once again, not a song that I would ever want my Glee teacher to be singing with her Glee club.
Yeah, this together with the Kanye West song seem out of place to me.
So this is an ongoing like theme in Glee, and at one point in time, Sue Sylvester even makes fun of them for it. Like this is inappropriate. Like there's a episode with Push It by Salt and Pepper. There's an episode, well, he was not in that one, but there's also one where he sings like a Britney Spears song with them, and it's completely inappropriate. And they bring it up, and they're like, "Why would you?" And I think it's supposed to allude to the character Matthew Morrison is playing is still stuck in high school in some way. I feel like that's what the character development is, because he is kind of some of it's just weird, if I'm being honest with you, Tim, and it makes his character almost uncomfortable on the show a few times. Like when you watch him, you kind of get the ick or cringiness. Yeah. And then he does this weird thing where he starts his own band with like 3 other older guys, and they start doing like Poison songs. Not Poison the band, like the song Poison, like that song.
Well,
so
Belle Biv DeVoe.
That thing. Let me be clear. I'm not talking about the band Poison. And so it's very like R&B. And they're like dancing and they start their own. So I feel like that's just like an ongoing theme for him. He also thinks he can rap and he can't. They make fun of him for that a lot on the show.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, his rapping skills in Gold Digger were not up there. And so that's why it's kind of funny, though, because it's like an ongoing joke, basically.
Okay.
All right. The next one is a song that I don't care to hear very often anymore, but I do like this version of it if I have to hear it. It is Sweet Caroline, Neil Diamond.
Yeah, clocking in at 1 minute and 58 seconds. It's the shortest track on the whole album. Again, I think they did a pretty good version of it. I mean, there is a Neil Diamond Broadway production, and I bet you if you listen to that cast album, this version is probably not a million miles off what's going on the Neil Diamond Broadway production. I think it sounds fine. I think whoever's singing it is fine. And the ensemble people go, Sweet Caroline, ba-bum, bum, bum. It's exactly what I would expect from this version of the song.
Yeah, I've burnt myself out on it. And this is another one that started the original retracked and like became #1 in the US or whatever because of Glee. And so that's why there's a lot of songs that actually ended up going back up the charts. And it wasn't just the Glee version, like people would discover. So I kind of liked it in a way to help younger people discover music, maybe who weren't hearing Neil Diamond at home, you know? And then there's an episode where they talk about being 2 of the members of the cast were Jewish. And so they do a tribute to Neil Diamond. And that might be where this came from. It might have been that episode. Because Neil Diamond's Jewish, if everybody didn't know that anyway.
There we go.
I realized that unless you knew that very specific fact, none of that made any sense. They're like, okay, so the Jewish people like Neil Diamond.
I have no idea.
Tim's like, I didn't know that either, but all right.
Well, I did know that, but it's like, yeah, whatever.
Fair. All right. But anyway, now this next one, I want to preface it because I don't like this version. But I will say there is a reason why it sounds the way it sounds. So this is Dancing with Myself, Billy Idol. So it's not good, and I wouldn't go out of my way to listen to it. But the reason he's singing it, Tim, is the character is in a wheelchair, and he's dreaming that he's dancing again, like he's actually able to stand up and dance. So that's why it sounds very. It's supposed to kind of indicate almost like, to me, it was like a just singing in the rain version, kind of, I guess would be what I would call it. Like, you know what I mean? That kind of tempo, not the original Billy, but it's because he's like in a dream world.
Yeah, I wondered about this because, I'm listening to this stuff completely out of context. I've never seen Glee. I'm just taking this album completely at face value. And all of these covers are pretty much, I don't say note for note, but they're very faithful to the originals, though they've been Broadwayed up. This song started, and I thought, what's this? And then he starts singing, and I'm like, hey, it just sounds off because it's not like the original. Now, it's very common that someone would cover a song and do their own interpretation of it. The famous example is Little Help from My Friends, Joe Cocker, which is a completely different song to the version that the Beatles did. But this is just kind of a bit of a weird and wacky version of the Billy Idol song, and it just seems off.
It does, but in the context of the show, if you were watching it, it makes more sense. But when I was listening to it, I was like, Tim is probably like, what the heck is this? But I guess they're trying to, but like what I'm saying, like just singing in the rain kind of sound. I think that's what they were going for in this. And he's kind of like tapping around, like just singing in the rain because he's actually dancing again.
Okay.
There is a point of contention with him, though, because a lot of people wish they had actually cast somebody who was really in a wheelchair. He's not.
Yeah, that's one thing that bothers me is if you have a person in some kind of film or TV that in the show has a disability, why don't you hire someone with that same disability to play that part?
It's an ongoing issue, and they've talked about it. They've even done it. Like, we were watching a thing about that movie Shallow Hal back in the day. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but they put Gwyneth Paltrow in a fat suit. And it's like, you could have just hired somebody who was heavier than her.
Yeah.
Like, those are real people that exist. Why would we need to do all this?
Yeah, I mean, going back to the realm of things that I understand and know, there's a Knight Rider episode where there's a blind lady in it, and she has a seeing dog called Sugar, and it's a whole thing. And I assumed they had a blind actor playing the part, and then I looked her up, and she wasn't. And I was like, why don't you have a blind actor? There's people out there who are great actors who could do that.
Yeah. I don't get it. It makes no sense to me. And there'd be like developmentally disabled or intellectually disabled, or even just like somebody who's like missing a leg or something. You're like, why wouldn't they just find somebody who?
Yeah, there's people out there that should be playing that part. I don't get that.
I stand with you on Tim, but I think that they should be. Well, and if you want somebody to truly give you an authentic experience and see who else is going to do a better job than someone who lives it every day.
Exactly.
Thank you for coming to me and Tim's TED Talk. But yeah, he is not. That was one thing that people were a little bit upset about because they did a good job of talking about social, and things like social issues and LGBTQ and just things that are going on in the world. They did a nice job of it. And so for a cast that was so sensitive of that stuff, it's weird that they didn't have somebody who was actually disabled in the wheelchair.
Well, I suppose the only thing is if they needed to film that sequence of somebody dancing, and I mean, maybe that's the reason. I don't know. And
then they go through one scene where one of the other girls is in like a car accident and she's in a wheelchair for a little bit, and so they hang out, and they do a little bit about that too. So like they kind of hit on it, but I don't know. Anyway, so what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about the very last song, and then I have some interesting facts that me and Tim will discuss, and that will be the end of the episode. Now, the irony of this very last song is this is Defying Gravity, which we know from Wicked, which is Idina Menzel. In the show, 2 or 3 seasons into the future, Idina Menzel plays Leah Michelle's mom on the show. So it's
Hmm.
like foreshadowing. And she's actually, so there was quite a few different people. Idina Menzel was on here. We know Kristen Chenoweth was on here because we already talked about her. Um, Kate Hudson was on here. Adam Lambert was on here.
Hmm.
Demi Lovato was on here. There was a lot of guest show people. But anyway, so this version of Defying Gravity, because there's a few that they've done on Glee, is the one where Leah Michelle and Kurt sing it together. I can't remember what Kurt's name in real life. Chris Coffer.
Okay.
That's his name. So what did you think of this version, Tim?
Well, it's not my favorite version of this song. And in fact, my favorite version of this song is not even the version that's on the Wicked soundtrack. My favorite version of this song is on Kerry Ellis's album. And Kerry Ellis played one of the characters in Wicked. And this is a song that she sang in Wicked. And the reason I like it from her album Anthems is because it has her amazing Broadway voice. And then it has Brian May's guitar and production. So that's why it's my favorite version. But even if you take Brian May's guitar out, her vocal version is so good on Anthems. Now, this is good. This is not too shabby. This is a great version. But as it happens, I was listening to Kerry Ellis's Anthems this morning. And then I put this on at 1 o'clock, as I've been listening to Glee at 1 o'clock as I have all week. And I was listening to it and I thought, well, yeah, this is okay. And it's great. And, in isolation, it's a really good version, but it's not as good as Kerry Ellis's version from her solo album.
So Carrie Ellis played Elphaba in like 2008-ish, right around whenever I was getting out of high school. And Idina Menzel would have played probably back in like 2015, whenever the show first came out. So I know this one is based on Idina Menzel's version, at least that's what they say. But I've heard Carrie Ellis's is quite good. And there's like 5 other people who played Elphaba too.
Yeah.
But what in this one, there was a competition between Leah Michelle and Chris Coffer and who was going to be able to hit the note at the end, or if they could, or something was happening. So they're almost like competing in this version, which makes sense for Defying Gravity too. But that's kind of what's going on with the back and forth. I just find it ironic that this is on the first season because I think it's season 3 or 4 that Idina Menzel comes, which for those who don't know, she was in Wicked and Rent. And she sang the Frozen song that everybody knows, that the ballad from the musical Frozen. That was like
let it go, let it
That's
go.
her.
There, even I know that.
There you go, Tim. She's also my favorite character. Whenever I sing karaoke with Molly, we always end up singing Rent. And I always end up singing all of Idina Menzel's parts. But anyway, that's kind of our go-to party trick. So some interesting facts about Glee. In 2011, it was the most watched show on US TV.
Interesting.
Were you in America up in 2011, Tim, or were you still in the UK?
I moved here in February 2011.
Okay, so you were very close. So apparently there was some type of rights or some type of thing that happened, and the UK couldn't get all the rights to the first 2 seasons for a while with Sky One News, or I don't know. So I don't know when it was released in the UK because there was something going on there.
I mean, if it was, it was like Sky One is a TV station on satellite TV.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know how that stuff works.
I don't know. We'll have to call our friends at Sky One and they'll tell us.
Oh, I'm sure they will. It used to be owned by Rupert Murdoch, but it's not owned by Rupert Murdoch anymore.
That is true. So they had a tour, like they did a concert tour where they go and did the music. It sold out in every major city and grossed more than $40 million. And they released the Glee 3D concert movie because of it.
Okay.
I will say I was never into that side of it. That seemed a little too far for me. I didn't go watch the 3D concert movie. Did not. That seemed a little off for me. I don't like 3D movies.
No, 3D films give me a headache. The problem with 3D, it's like a novelty that they keep trying to bring back. And like they tried to make 3D TV a thing for a while. And 3D TV will never be mainstream as long as you have to wear those glasses. If they can figure out a way of making a 3D display that doesn't have glasses, people will buy into it. But the minute you have 3D glasses, so like you buy a 3D TV, for example, and it comes with 3 pairs of glasses, let's say. So you have 4 people in your house, only 3 people can watch the 3D TV unless you buy another pair for some ridiculous amount of money. And then what's going to happen? One pair's going to get lost and a pair's going to get broken. And then the dog's going to chew the arm of another pair. So you're down to 1 pair of 3D glasses. And then somebody in the house is going to want to watch their film or their sport or their whatever with the glasses. And then at some point they're going to say, no, you're not going to do that. And then the 3D function is going to get turned off. And that's the end of 3D TV.
That's fair. I agree with Tim on that. And it's just, I don't know. I'm not interested. It's just not for me. So that was the other thing. Now, some other facts about Glee is that I was mentioning earlier, they did have quite a few guest show. I forgot that everybody, Britney Spears was even on one episode. She didn't perform, but there was a Britney Spears episode and she shows up at one point. And Gwyneth Paltrow is in it. And she even does a version of My Girl Wants to Party. And you never think you would hear that from Gwyneth Paltrow, but she does. Which I actually like her version a lot. If you've never heard that, I highly suggest you give that one a Goog, everybody. And tons of other people were on this show. One of the big things that was a big cultural impact of the show, I want to bring it up because it means a lot to me, was the representation of LGBTQ plus characters and storylines. Glee played a pivotal role in representation and inclusivity on TV. It offered a platform for the people of the LGBTQ plus background to have voices and narrative, and they didn't shy away from that at all. They were very open, and that was one of their big things that I think was significant. They said there's actual shift in the way TV was produced because of Glee to include those storylines.
Well, that's fantastic. I didn't know that about Glee, really.
Yeah. And so that in and of itself, the music is great, but that's just as important for me. Now, there are a section of like where they did like homage, I guess Amish. How do you say that word? Homage.
I'd say homage.
Whatever Tim said.
You pay homage to someone.
How about, do you pronounce the H or not? I've been doing too many French lessons. Thank you, Duolingo. But anyway, to like iconic musicians. So we didn't get into it, but some of my favorite episodes are they did a Michael Jackson episode, they did a Madonna episode, they did a Whitney Houston episode. It's so out of order. There's 2 Michael Jackson episodes, actually. And the beginning of the Whitney Houston episode is the prettiest, best, hands down one of the best songs I've ever heard in my entire life. They sound amazing, and they did such a good job on paying tribute to her. I'll have to get Tim to listen to that one. And then, so the show also caught fire, and it made cultural, because it was a cultural phenomenon, people started taking catchphrases from the show. So, Don't Stop Believin' became a catchphrase from the show. Not just like the song, people were using that as a catchphrase, Tim.
Interesting.
I thought that was so weird. And then the other thing that I like the most, and people talk about it with Glee, is it makes fun of itself. If you watch it, the show knows the ridiculousness of the fact that no high school is going to have the money to put on these huge ensembles that they do, or the way they make fun of the fact. So they know the humor and what they're doing, and they just play it up. And I think that's almost better, Tim, than if they just ignored it.
Yeah, as I said, I've never even seen one episode of Glee. I mean, I'm going to have to go on YouTube and maybe watch an episode or something.
I know. I thought about making you watch an episode, but I thought that might be too much torture. I wasn't sure if you could do it. And in one episode, there's a girl named Brittany on the show, Tim. I'm going to leave everybody with this. And if you don't know, there's a Britney episode, and Britney Spears does come on the episode. Britney's name on the show is Britney S. Pierce, like Britney S. Spears, but she says her name is Britney S. Pierce. It's just those little quips are amazing. I will say now I want to just go back, and I'm probably just going to go back and rewatch the whole show. I'm not going to make Tim do that. He might jump out a window, but.
Now, if you're in the United States, where can you watch it? Or do you just have the
Hulu.
DVDs of it? Oh, Hulu has it.
Yeah, Hulu has it. And I'm pretty sure there's probably some other ones. Peacock may. But Hulu is the easiest place I know to find it.
Yeah, I have Hulu, but the Hulu I have was one that came free from Verizon, and it's got annoying ads in it.
Oh my gosh, you should just YouTube it. I'm gonna have you watch the opening to the Whitney Houston when we get off of here because I think you just need to hear it. It's so good.
I will do
And
that.
if you like musicals and you like music and you like laughing, I highly, highly suggest you watch Glee. And they did not sponsor this episode, but they might as well have at this point. All right. Do you have anything to leave the people with, Tim?
Just be incredibly kind to everyone you meet this week and every week.
All right. Bye.
Bye bye.